but maybe it won't give us
Maybe
a
it won't.
countdown.
We're going.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another video for professors providing professional development. This time not in pajamas. We're actually dressed. We're here at the office, and you're looking behind me and Karen at the Lassane Review Center, which is our newest piece that we've put into place here in the Library Science Department. We have wonderful collections of ARCs and picture books and historical books and all kinds of other things, and maybe we'll take you on a tour of that down the road. But today we want to talk about why we share books with kids. And I'm using the term kids generically, K-12, actually K-adult, we're all just big kids here too. And we think that it's an important place to kind of get underway in our discussion about literature and literacy, because if we're not sharing books with kids, if we're not sharing our love of reading, then what are we doing? So we thought we'd share some of the reasons why we do that with kids. And we're going to start with what I think is the most obvious, and that's number one, if you're going to count them, because it's fun. We are more apt to engage in things that we find fun. For example, I do not find exercise fun. I tend not to engage in it on a regular basis. However, I do love reading. And so I find I carve out time constantly for it. Any book that I think is going to be fun to read. And so when books come into our office, and Karen and I both do this, as books come into our office, we'll go, oh, look at this. This is Little Elliot, Big City, Caldecott honor book. Or award winner. I can't even remember now because it doesn't have the right color sticker on it right now. But what we do is, as books come into the office, we sort immediately into stacks. We want to look at this right away. Oh, this looks so good. Or any other reason. We've heard about this author, we've heard about this illustrator, we've heard about this book. And because reading is fun to us, opening a box of books is like opening a present.
And right. And so the thing is people say, don't judge a book by its cover. However, we all do. And that's one of the first criteria that you look at when you're looking for a book that appeals to you. And a lot of times, it's the cover. Like, for instance, Snapsy the alligator did not ask to be in this book. This book is hysterical. It's one of those meta books because, like, Snapsy is talking to the author of this book throughout the entire thing. It's like, hey, I didn't want to be in this. I'm not on this page. I didn't want to be here. And it's just hysterical, but he still worked into the story. So it is fun to read this book. And just think, I enjoy it, but how much fun is it to share that with other students? To hear them laugh at a part that you know is funny is magical.
One of our friends and colleagues, Colby Sharp, read it aloud to his students and talked about how much they enjoyed it. And partly it's because he enjoyed it too. When we share books we enjoy with another audience, they enjoy it as well. Karen read aloud during our faculty meeting today, and we were all howling about the book. A little side note here before we move on to other reasons. We are going to put a PowerPoint up, and we'll give you that address several times during this presentation. But we're going to put a PowerPoint up at slideshare.net/Professor Nana. That's me. That's my username. And we'll probably put it up at slideshare.net Karen
Karen Librarian.
Karen Librarian.
And if I can be technically savvy enough, I might see if I can make that address appear at the bottom of our screen right here later.
That would be wonderful.
We'll try.
We're
not,
trying
look
new
in
things.
look in the, as John Green says, the doobly-doo.
Yeah, the stuff below.
That's right.
And the reason we're doing that is because for many of these reasons why we share literature with kids, we've created some hyperlinks that take you to research, take you to graphics, take you to other information that we think you will find useful. So number one reason why we share literature with kids is because it's fun.
All right, and so another reason, number two, because it aids in the acquisition of language and language development. This is where you're going to see that chart, and you've seen it in several different variations, but basically it's the student A reads 20 minutes a day versus student B reading 5 minutes a day, student C reading 1 minute a day. And as Terry always likes to mention during this segment of a presentation, this is self-reporting. So the kid that says he's read a minute a day, he's really not even, he's making that up. But anyway, 20 minutes a day gets them 1,800,000 words per year that they're gaining, which puts them in the 90th percentile in standardized tests. Compared to student C, who's reading that 1 minute a day, is only gaining 8,000 words, and it's in the 10th percentile. So reading 20 minutes at home is important to do. Scholastic, I was at a book fair that our campus had over in the Teacher Ed building the other day, and you'll see the graphic in the PowerPoint, but they had a stand-up cardboard display that had 2 wheels that the parent or teacher or kids could spin to set it on different settings and show them if the kid is reading 14.2 minutes a day, they're gaining, it says, 1,146 words a year for vocabulary development. However, if they're reading 21.1 minute a day, then it puts them in the 90th percentile, which is what our chart shows. But they're giving you in 2 different wheels that you can set it. And so the parent can see, ooh, I'm only having my child read 10 minutes a day. This is where they're at compared to this. So it's a nice interactive display that Scholastic's putting in their book fairs.
We know from research, and again, we're going to give you some more links in addition to these. We know from research that kids accumulate the largest growth in their vocabulary between birth and about 5 years of age, which is before they come to us. And so one of the links that we're going to provide you is 1,000 books that kids should read before kindergarten.
Oh yeah, not a list of books, no, but it's a program,
that's
not
right.
a program. It's an initiative that is 1,000 books before kindergarten. These people that started this website are pushing the knowledge, pushing the information out to parents that you should share 1,000 books with your child before kindergarten. And it just gives you suggestions and resources to follow, but it also gives you a list of, it says find a program at the top of their webpage. Now remember, our PowerPoint has the link. That takes you to libraries in different states that have kind of set up a program in their public libraries. So I know I found one in Huntsville is signed up. I looked in where I moved from, my other town had one. So check on that list and see if your public library is doing things, and they may have resources there for you to pick up and do that. But you know, it tells you how often you should read books. But if you read them a book every day, their first year of life, they would get 365 books in that 1 year. And so this is doable. They need to have that.
Absolutely doable. And if you would hand me that book all the way up at the top there, we've put lots of books out. I can tell often when I'm listening to young kids what kind of exposure that they've had to different books. This is Say It by Charlotte Zolotow. This is a new cover for it, but it is a book that really is quite old, and I love it. One of the words in this book is splendiferous. And I think that my youngest granddaughter, Natalie, was about 4 when we were reading this book over and over and over again. It's about autumn and sharing time with your mom and how wonderful that is. And that word became part of her vocabulary. And it's just another example of how we don't have to drill kids. We don't have to make flashcards. We don't have to ask them comprehension questions at the end. We can just simply say, remember, say it. What was your favorite word in that book? Wondrous. That was such a good word. Splendiferous was such a good word. So it's natural. It occurs as we're reading, and especially it occurs if it becomes one of their favorite books that they want to read over and over. I believe my husband has memorized this book from when Natalie was very young. Another reason that we share literature with kids is because it develops empathy. Empathy is stronger than sympathy. Sympathy is, I'm really sorry to hear that. And most of us are good at doing that. Empathy is, I know exactly how you feel. I have been through that experience. And sometimes that experience has been not in real life, it's been through a book. We develop empathetic bonds with books so that in The Knife of Never Letting Go, all you have to say to somebody who's read that book is Manchi, and everybody immediately gets teary-eyed because we immediately feel exactly what Todd felt at that moment in the book. It's an empathetic bond. It's a strong one. We do that in movies, we do that in television shows. Heck, we do it with commercials from time to time. But literature develops empathy. And somebody who's empathetic won't cut in front of you in the grocery line. They won't cut you off on the freeway. They'll wait their turn because they understand how it feels to be somebody who's been pushed to one side by somebody who won't wait a turn. So in essence, it's just helping to develop that empathetic bond with readers.
Research has been done recently, and you can we have a link to one article that was in Psychology Today that did study and show that reading fictional stories makes you more empathetic. So definitely check that out. Like I said, we have one resource for you, but there are others. Another reason is it supports lifelong readers. So this is, it gives the term unconscious delight. This is what we normally associate with series reading or serial reading. Series reading, of course, for me, I was a big series fan. I know my kids in the elementary school, well, so many people do love series. And so one that I know that I really enjoy is the Among the Hidden series by Margaret Peterson Haddock. So it's, I guess, Shadow Children is, I guess, the actual series title. And so a series is then, of course, where you're following a story. You know, it's through several books. This is one that I read years and years ago, but it's one of those shows that I like, series. This is split up in months, January through December, and it's countdown. Now, it's not great quality literature, but it was fun to read because I've always been a big fan of post-apocalyptic stuff. And in this world, like 6 million people die. No, not how many. 6 billion people die in 24-hour period, and kids are left on their own and they're having to survive. So this follows them January through December of the year of that. Now, serial reading is authors, genre, and so for instance, Judy Blume. You lock onto one author, you definitely track down other things that they've read. And that's a way that we tell kids, that's a skill you have to teach kids, some kids, to do. Well, what do I read next? Well, did you enjoy that book? Yes. Well, why don't you find something else by that author? Or genre. Did you like reading that mystery? Yes. Find another mystery. And then that's kind of how they can start investigating and choosing things to read on their own.
It's how we grow readers, too. When you look at Judy Blume, for instance, Judy Blume kind of grows with you. You can start with the one in the middle is the green kangaroo, Freckle Juice.
Yeah.
And then move your way up to Blubber, to Deanie, Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret. And then eventually get to Forever. And if you still love Judy Blume, then you've read her adult books as well. And we all have. So we've kind of grown with that author. And that's the concept behind, in many cases, reading ladders when I talk about it. If we love the series that goes from January to December, maybe we will like other things that were produced serially, so we can give them the Green Mile, which came out a little bit at a time from Stephen King. Or if they really like Judy Blume, then that gives us a handle at some other things that they like. So it's easier for us to help them, and it's also easier for them to then take that on themselves. I know I like these kinds of books. Doesn't mean we never push. We certainly do. We certainly do make other suggestions as well.
But it gives them a place to start.
It gives them a place to start, and we don't want them just always kind of wandering around like in a library and saying, well, what should I read? They all look the same.
Can pick something out.
That's right. Who will sit down and go, well, nothing jumped out
there
into my hands.
There aren't any good books in here.
That's right. There aren't any good books in there. That's always been my favorite. Another reason we share literature with kids, and this is all part of developing lifelong readers. Unconscious delight is one stage there. Another one is reading autobiographically, reading about people like us. Growing up, as I did in the 50s and 60s, there were no books where the main character was the child in a single parent family, which was my experience. So there were no books about kids like me until Lee Bott showed up in Dear Mr. Henshaw in 1983 or 84. So I was not able to read as autobiographically as I would have liked. Sometimes that means if I can't see myself in a book, that I don't think that I count. And so we talk about windows as mirrors. And that's one of the things that when we talk about the need for diversity in books, it's one of the things that we talk about a lot. Maybe now it's easier for me to see myself in a book, but how much harder is it to see myself in a book if I am Hispanic or African American or Asian or Native American or mixed race or adopted or transgendered, all of those other things. We need to find books that show kids themselves.
And then another of lifelong readers is kind of another area, reading for vicarious experiences, whereas reading autobiographical is the mirror. This would be the window. You're reading at and looking at other people's experiences. And I kind of think of this as, in one way, and there's a link on here for the author Gail Giles. She wrote a post about this and why it says why teens need edgy fiction. Kids can read books like Ellen Hopkins' Crank, Go Ask Alice, other books that deal with tough situations. They can experience the consequences of these actions from these characters vicariously rather than having to experience those consequences themselves. They're not having to go out and do these because they see what's happening on the page of the book. So they're looking through a window into someone else's life, seeing what they are experiencing, so sometimes they don't have to do that. Now, it doesn't always have to be edgy. It can be looking at someone else's culture, looking at someone else's interests even. Sports. I'm not a sports person, so I don't know a lot about sports, but I can look into the world of sports and people that like it and play it and watch it, and I can see their experiences without having to do it myself.
I loved reading about children who were only children growing up because I was the oldest of four. We were 5 years apart. And so I loved Nancy Drew because she had a bedroom with a canopy bed, white towels, things that I could only have dreamed of as a kid. And so my vicarious experience was that, or reading about kids who lived on farms because I lived in a city and never saw wildlife at all growing up. So vicarious experience doesn't, as Karen said, doesn't just mean edgy. It just means looking at how others are and how others live.
Yep. And another way to support lifelong readers is to read for philosophical speculation. So a lot of, kids are heavy thinkers, and sometimes they're reading books to try and form their opinions on things that are big in their life, the way they feel about things ethically and religiously. And there are a lot of books out there that cover different religions and ethical issues like abortion. And by reading books that cover those issues, students can get a picture and many points of view and develop their feelings on the subjects.
And philosophical speculation means answering those big questions sometimes for ourselves. Who am I? Why am I like I am? What is my place in the world? Why does the world act in this way? So we don't need, by the way, these do not need to be nonfiction tomes about philosophy. These are books just about ordinary everyday life and why things happen and maybe what we want to be when we grow up. So those are important to share with kids too. Another reason to support lifelong readers and to share literature with kids is because we can read for aesthetic experiences. Louise Rosenblatt talks about efferent reading, where we read to pull away information, and aesthetic reading, where we read for the joy, the beauty, the pleasure of the reading. It is not unusual for Karen and me, and earlier in my career for my friend Lois and I, who taught next to one another, to occasionally lean into someone's office and say, listen to this sentence. Oh my goodness, it's just the most beautiful sentence in the world. We do this because we will read something. We were reading a book the other day, this one right here, I read it. Always remember, I brought it to the faculty meeting. I passed it around, and I said, hankies. Just have hankies. And so people read it one by one, because it was not one we wanted to kind of share with everybody, because your personal reaction to the beauty of the language and how it deals with the loss of something was so incredible. And so when we talk about reading for aesthetic experiences, it can be something like this, or it can be Harry Potter. It can be, you kind of fill in the blank with your favorite book. I read a lot of wonderful books this year, including Challenger Deep. And Challenger Deep was such an aesthetic experience that since it was my copy of the book and it wasn't going on anywhere, I was reading it for the National Book Award, I was able to mark up. I was able to say, look at this sentence, look at how this fact then gets pulled back in here. So I'm now looking at books at a different level, instead of just saying, yeah, that was a nice story, a cute story. And by the way, we're going to do a video about nice and cute being kittens and not books. We're going to talk about that later. So I'm able to go beyond that and talk about it. In the slides that we'll share with you at slideshare.net/Professor Nana or /Karen Librarian. I've now said it twice. And remember, Karen is Karin,
That's
librarian. Right. There are lots and lots and lots of key words to look for. Yeah. When we're doing efferent reading, there's one set of words. When we're doing aesthetic reading, we're actually kind of looking at something else. So reading for aesthetic experiences is kind of important.
Yes.
And another reason, you can see we're never going to run out of reasons. We could literally just keep on going. But one of the things is because literature develops the imagination. In the 1960s, after the United States had made the commitment to go to outer space and we had built rockets and been successful, Russia, who was the first, remember, with Sputnik, became very concerned that they weren't producing enough scientists in their schools. And so basically what they did in the Soviet Union, as it existed then, was they outlawed imaginative literature. Kids were reading science books, math books, nonfiction. And what they discovered after a period of time was that the level of invention in Russian society had actually decreased. Because one of the things that literature does is make you ask a question: what would happen if? What would happen if I were a cheerleader and I lost a leg in a car accident? How does that change my life? What would happen if? And some of our best inventions came from what would happen if. Post-it notes, Velcro. We can probably all think of something.
Those little clear things on the end of shoelaces.
Yeah.
Those little plastic parts that don't let it unravel. Somebody invented that.
Yeah, that's right. And made lots of money.
Yeah.
Whiteout, back in the days when we needed whiteout. But hopefully that woman made plenty of money to retire on nicely. But literature develops the imagination, and that's really important.
And we're so thankful for that. Because those people that can imagine for us, like, first of all, I love Oliver Jeffers' illustrations. But this is, Ian? It's Colfer. He spells
or Owen.
it.
I'm never sure.
E-O-I-N.
We need to go to
Fowl.
We need to go to teachingbooks.net.
That's true.
Where it will be pronounced for
Imaginary
us.
Fred. You need to check this one out if you haven't read it. But it's about imaginary friends and, imagination. He'd made up this story about imaginary friends, and what if they don't always disappear? Okay. So, yeah.
And Crenshaw's about imaginary friends. There are actually quite a few books about imaginary
came out this
friends. The final reason why we share literature with kids is because it can transmit culture. The question I always follow up with there is, whose culture? Because in the early days of my teaching, William Bennett and other leaders in the field came up with what they called cultural heritage books. And basically they were for white middle class, two-parent family, middle income kind of, these are the books that you should share. But now we want to talk about transmitting many cultures. So we, again, want to talk about diverse books. And so literature can help transmit that culture, but we really do need to begin to pay attention to the cultures that we are featuring, and make sure that we don't just share books about African Americans during February.
Right.
That we don't just wait till Cinco de Mayo for a book about Hispanic culture or some other holiday where we kind of short shrift things. We need to be sharing these on a regular basis. They need to be part of the entire collection of books that we're sharing with kids. We need to make sure that they see Kwame Alexander and not just in February.
Right.
That they see the Putta Belpré Award winners, the Schneider family winners, and they see them throughout the entire year that we have them, or throughout the entire time that they're in our school. So there are lots and lots and lots of reasons for sharing literature with kids. We brought a whole table full of books to share, but we knew that we could probably go on for 2 hours if we allowed ourselves to do that. So we will share other books along the way as we do other kinds of recordings. One last reminder that we're going to put our PowerPoint that goes along with this presentation up at SlideShare, that's one word, SLIDE, share, SHARE, .net/ Professor Nana, or
Karen Librarian. That's Karen with an I.
That's Karen with an I.
And remember, I'll try to put the address on the slide so it'll show up. If not, it will be in the description.
We're still learning,
Yeah.
folks, and we still want to hear from you. Are there topics you want us to address? We have list upon list upon list of things that we plan to do. We're one of the next videos that we're going to put into place is going to take us through how to evaluate picture books. And we intend for this not just to be picture books for young readers, for elementary, but to talk about picture books as mentor texts, picture books for older readers, picture books to introduce a genre. So we're going to take you through how you evaluate a picture book and try to determine whether or not this is a book that will be one that you will share with kids. So stay tuned. We're going to try to update and do something new every week. That's our goal, and we'll probably be good for 3 or 4 weeks, but it's like a diet. We'll slide. But you let us know what it is you want to hear from us.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.